Hello everyone. Today we're going to be covering adding a audio recording button. Now previously in this real-time chat room app, we added the ability to upload files. So I can show you right now. I'll grab a audio file, a picture, a different type of picture, a video, and then I can upload this. I can now say, hey, check this out. And we are making sure that you can only upload certain files now because people were worried about me uploading malicious code. But if we upload that, you can now see that we have an audio file. This is just a test audio recording. I don't know if my microphone picked that up, but it's recording that. We also have a video file, also has audio, and then we have pictures. So that's neat. We're also sending text with this. Now what I'd like to do is add the ability to click a little microphone button, record some audio, and then send it in the chat room. Now to start, I'm going to have to hit Control-Shift-I and right-click on, or I guess click on this and remove the permissions for my microphone. And now if I refresh, it'll prompt me for my microphone. I'm going to switch off of my webcam mic because it sounds like a potato and switch over to the one that I paid way too much money for. I'll click Remember this decision, click Allow, and now I can click this icon and we'll test it out. Testing, 1, 2, 3. I said words and you listened to me. Okay, so now we got that and I can say, lol, this is funny. I can send that and now we have the audio recording. I can hit play. Testing, 1, 2, 3. I said words and you listened to me. Okay, and for some reason Firefox grabbed my webcam microphone anyways. Does that sometimes? I'm not sure why. Maybe it's just my Firefox installation, but if you reset it and pick it again, it'll use the right microphone settings. Now this does act a little bit weird, and it acts a little bit weird in Chrome too. So this is a Chromium-based browser. This is Brave. And in Brave and all Chromium-based browsers, they don't actually allow you to do this type of audio recording on a HTTP server. So there's a whole bunch of workarounds you have to do, like set up an ngrok server or install a different certificate to make this work in development. Now, Firefox doesn't have that restriction yet. So we're going to be testing this out in Firefox, and then we're just going to have to blindly trust me that this works in production if you have a HTTPS server. Okay, now that we have all that out of the way, let's go ahead and let's set up this active storage direct upload nonsense thing that we're using here. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the demo server, come over here and start this other server, just because this other server is the one that doesn't have the microphone on it yet. So I'll do this, it gets rid of the microphone button, and now we're good to go. So to start with, there is one thing I want to fix real quick. I'm not really doing it here, but when we did the @mentions. This works here, but it looks a little bit weird on the homepage, so we got to fix that real quick. It's not really related to the audio recordings, but this is like part 24 of a series, so I do have to clean up my mess a little bit sometimes. So we'll just come into the message preview. We have the content tag for the message body. We'll just type .html_safe, hit Control-S, and then come back to the homepage. Now we have our @mentions working as expected. So that's good. Let's go back over to start chatting, and now we can do the actual point of this video. So I'm going to close this, come over to general, and we can get started. So one thing to note, we are taking code from 2 different places for this. So one of the things we have to do is make sure that our width here is fine. I'm going to come in and I'm going to change the width of... So one of the things to note is we're taking code from 2 different places for this tutorial. One is going to be I guess it's loosely based on this Stack Overflow answer. About direct uploads. We are also referencing, I guess it's 3 places. We are also referencing the Rails Edge guide for direct uploads. And the last one is this GitHub repository that I have open right here. And this one is a basic demo that also has a audio visualizer, so you get the little wavy thing whenever you talk. And we're repurposing this for using in our chat room application. So those are just the 3 references. Just wanted to point that out real quick so you don't think I'm making this all up, because I'm not. But we can piece it together from here. So what we're going to do is we're going to close out of this and we're going to come over to where we have our form. Now the form is essentially... it's just a active storage form with multiple set to true, and then I'm doing a whole bunch of JavaScript nonsense to make everything look the way it does with like the preview tabs, but the rest of it's just a basic form. So if we come into layouts, and I think it's a new message form, I'll hit F11 to full screen this because we don't need to look at that. And inside of the new message form, the only thing we have to add is a content tag. It doesn't even have to be a content tag, but we'll add a content tag. We're going to do it above the image upload. So this is just going to be a content underscore tag that takes a icon. We then pass a nil for reasons I'll never understand. I think it's because there's text that goes there. And then we give this icon a ID. It's just going to be audio-record-button because I'm super original. And then we're going to give it a class where we can give it a bootstrap icon, which I'm just going to call bi-mic. And then I'm going to give it my own class of microphone-icon. Once we have that, we are pretty much done in here. And the reason why we're done in here is because in the, where is it? In the file field, so the active storage file field for the attachments with multiple set to true, we are binding the controller. And because we have the controller bound, we're now using this message preview stimulus controller, which we generated, which is located inside of app JavaScript controllers and message preview. So because it's being bound and we have those actions set up, the connect method will fire by default. If you're not familiar with stimulus, I'd suggest watching a quick tutorial on it. It's pretty simple. You basically bind it in here and connect gets loaded whenever I think the page refreshes. So we have this connect method, which will get fired whenever the page refreshes. Of course, we want to use that to add in a method of our own that we can then use. This will just add some event listeners. So we'll call this .audio. Once we have that, the other thing I want to do is import direct upload. So I'm going to do that. We're going to import direct upload, and we're going to get it from @Rails/ActiveStorage. Now, because Rails loves to reinvent the wheel, we now need to go into the import map. So I'm going to hit Control P and import map config, I think. It looks like this is located inside of config import map. At the bottom here, we just need to pin the @Rails/ActiveStorage to activestorage.esm.js. We can do that, hit Control S to save this. We can then close out of this. We can hit Control S on our JavaScript preview, and then we can implement this audio method. So because we already have a lot of this set up, I'll try and point you to what I'm grabbing and where, but we really don't need to reference the rest of this JavaScript file. It was just the easiest entry point to work with. So we have a audio method here. We're just going to do this right below the other methods. So the audio method starts by just grabbing the record, which we're calling the audio record button. So I guess this is actually record, not record. Thanks, English. That is our content tag that we just created, except I forgot to give it the right ID. That would have been really funny if I didn't notice that until later. So now we have our record button. Next, I want to get a reference to the message attachments. Now, if we come over to the new message form and we search for message attachments, if we search for the actual thing, which has an underscore, this is a label. So that's not what we're looking for, but this is a label for the message attachments, which is this file field. So what we're getting here is a reference to the ID of the active storage file field. So we have our active storage file field here. Now what we want to do is create a quick little Boolean that we'll use, which will just say recording, and we'll set it equal to false. So whenever we are recording, that'll be set to true, and then we can turn off the recording and we can invert it if we're not recording. You get the idea. So the next thing we need to do is grab the navigator.mediadevices.getUserMedia, and this just allows you to record either audio or video. There's some documentation online about this. And in here, what we want to do is create some constraints, which is just a fancy way of telling it, do you want to record audio or video? And if you're recording video, do you want to force it to use like the front-facing camera on the phone or like the back rear-facing camera, etc.? Next thing we're going to do is create some chunks. These are not Minecraft chunks, although I wish they were because I'm having a bit of a terrain engine kick recently. These are the chunks of the audio recording. It breaks it up into little bite-sized pieces, no pun intended, stores it in an array, and then we can create a blob out of this later because we're going to be doing some streaming, not on Twitch, but we're streaming our way to audio recorder. So by having this stream, we can then pass this into a media recorder object. This media recorder object takes in a few different arguments, but the one we're just passing it is this stream. Once we have that, we can finally get to stuff that people actually understand, myself included, which is an on click. So we're grabbing the record button by ID and we're giving it an on click function. This on click, first thing we need to do is call event.preventDefault because we're passing in the event. And the reason why is, well, every time I was clicking the microphone button, it was just sending me or submitting the message, and I don't like that. I'd like to not send empty messages if I can help it. That will stop the form from submitting. Next, we're going to do our little check if we're recording. If we are, I don't know what that says. We're just going to ignore it. We only want to do two things. We want to call this media recorder, just call the stop method because we are recording, so we want to stop recording. And then we're going to come down here and we're going to say, all right, if we're not recording, we then want to call, you guessed it, the media recorder.start. And we're going to change the color of our record button to be red. And the reason why is these little eye icons are just text, I guess. And by changing the color, it's the same thing as setting the text or the font color. So by doing that, it will set this to red whenever you're recording. Now, of course, we're not recording right now, as far as I know, but we will be in a little bit. So I'm going to come back over here. We now have our little toggle. You can, of course, refactor this to something that looks a little bit better. But we need to make sure that if we are not recording, we then toggle it to we are recording, which means after the if statement, we then just invert our Boolean, and that allows us to toggle it. Okay, so we have our on click here for our record. And now if we click on our little button, you can see that nothing happens. If we come over to console, we do have stuff being connected, but clicking on our little button's not doing anything. Because on the bottom here, we're going to have to add something to add our on success method, which is this thing that has the function on it. So it's not attached yet, so don't panic if things aren't working. Unfortunately, we do have to do a bit of blind faith coding here until we get to a point where we can actually test this. So the next thing we want to do is we have our on click where we start and stop the recording. But now after we're done recording, we actually have another event we can listen for, which is the on stop. This is going to be after you're done recording. So you click stop recording. We then want to do the stuff where we make the file and other things happen. So the first thing we need to do is create the audio type. So up top here somewhere, I am checking the image tags, the video tags, and the audio types because I'm trying to create different elements based on those. And we have the audio, MPEG, MP3, WAV, etc. But we're missing the audio/OGG, which we'll have to add in a little bit. This is the type the type of file that's created here with this recording. So we're just going to add it in and go with that. Once we have our audio type, we can now create a blob by passing in the chunks. These are these chunks right here, which we get while we are recording. So we do need to actually put stuff into the chunks while we're recording. So what we're going to do is below our media recorder right here, because our on success fires, we're just going to say if the media recorder on data available event. So if we have if we have data available, we then want to pass in E for our event and then call chunks.push e.data. This is what's actually putting all that data into our chunks. We then have all that data whenever we stop recording, and then our blob becomes datafied. Data-ified, I don't know. We then, after we do that, reset the chunks because we're now done with them. We need them to be an empty array again so we don't keep getting the same information. The next thing we want to do is create a file. Now this is just going to be a variable over file, which we're going to say let file equal new file. We pass in our blob inside of an array because it needs to be a, if I hover over this, it needs to be some file bits, which are the blob part. I just think file bits are funny. I'm 12, by the way. We then add in our audio-message.ogg. This is just the name of the file that we're creating here. Because we have the whole active storage string being attached to it, we're just prepending this at the end here. Or we're appending this at the end here. So it's just going to be some string I can't understand. And then at the end of it's going to be audio-message.ogg, and that's going to be your file name. Now we do need to tell this that it has a file type, which is our audio type right here. And then the last thing we need to do is set a last modified for this file, which is just going to be the date.getTime, which is our current time. Once that's done, we close this out with some braces and some parentheses. And then after that, inside of our media recorder on stop, this is where we need to do the magic. We grab a container, which is a new data transfer. We then say, okay, in this data transfer object, we need to add some items by calling items.add, and then we pass in this file we just created. Once that's done, we call a method called upload file. After that, we're going to skip over that for a second. After we upload the file, we then need to call the message attachments, which I'm going to remind you is our message attachments up here, which is grabbing the actual active storage file field. So it grabs the active storage file field, calls .files on it, and it sets that equal to the container.files that we just created. Once we have all of that done, we then call message attachments .dispatch event change, because we have changed this form. And in my case, I have some listeners that fire when I change the form, which clears the current previews of the form, clears out the old files, puts in some new files, and then it makes those visible. That's how I'm doing my little preview logic. So I'm going to scroll down to the bottom here. This is just some custom homebrew stuff. This is the thing you'll probably need to add it to your form field. But this is great. We do need to handle this upload file. So this comes from our active storage edge guide, I think. But what we can do is we can just copy paste it and pretend it's our own, like all the good developers do. So we have some comments here. I think this comes actually from the Stack Overflow article. It just has some descriptive comments. I'm going to leave these in because they are a little bit helpful. But we grab the input, which is our document.getElementById message attachments. This is our active storage form field again, file field. We then grab a URL, which comes from our input.dataset.directUpload URL. And this is a bit tricky. So this comes from our form field or file field. I don't know why I keep saying form field. But in our file field at the end, we need to add something that tells it, hey, you're good to use direct upload. So we come inside the parentheses for this file field, comma, direct upload is true. That's what's going to let the JavaScript call this .direct upload URL. Once we have that, we can then create a upload object. We're going to do that right here with a new direct upload. We pass in the file that we passed in up here and the URL, which we get from our little file field. We can then call upload.create. First thing we do is we check if there's an error. We say if error, I don't know, do something. I'm not going to handle it because I'm incredibly irresponsible. But if there's no error, we can then say, let's add an appropriately named hidden input to the form with a value of blob.signedID. So if you don't do this direct upload, you don't get your active storage signed ID, and then your upload fails and you waste a whole bunch of your time. I'm speaking from experience. If you do this though, you can then create a hidden field, which just is a document.createElement hidden field. We then set the attribute and the type to be hidden. We then set a attribute of value to be the blob.signedID. We then say the hidden field.name. I think this can actually just be the input.name. I had the string in there because I was just, I'm kind of hacking this together to get it to work. I then say let the message form equal the document.getElementById and the message form. Now, where does this message form ID come from? Well, you guessed it. In the new message, we're going to come at the end here inside the parentheses, and we're going to give this an ID of message form. And then we can, I'm just going to move this down so it's a little bit more organized. And then we can grab this entire form by its ID, which is what we're doing right here. At the end, we then need to call message form. If I can highlight this, message form.append child, and we add in the hidden field. And that is essentially doing the direct upload. So what we'll do is we'll run this and I'll take a look at the Rails console while we do. But first we need to close this off so that this doesn't throw an error. Once we then have a onError function inside of our on success, or I guess outside of our on success. So we come in here and we just say, if there's an error, console log the error. And this error is actually pretty helpful. You can look into the, the media recorder. Just go Google it. You'll find what the error codes are. Some of them are really helpful, like your microphone might not be recognized, your operating system might be having an issue, the user might have revoked their permissions and need to like refresh the page. So it's just a bunch of helpful stuff like that, and you can console log it here, or you can act on it if you so desire. After we do that, we then come below the on error, and this is the magical line. We say navigator.mediadevices.getUserMedia with the constraints. The constraints, again, are the thing up top here that are just saying, hey, can you record some audio? You can also change this to video if you want. We then say, okay, record some audio, then call the on success and the on error. I guess pass those in. It passes those in. It assigns the on-click listeners for the recording, which lets you check if you're recording or if you're not recording. Once you have all of that, you can then come outside of this and then say else. Like we get to here, if the recording or navigator media devices get user media, if this doesn't work, then get user media is not supported on your browser. At this point, we can go ahead and save this. We can exit a full screen with F11. I'm going to hit enter a couple times, and I'm going to, actually I have to refresh the page. I don't know why I'm doing that. I'm going to click on the audio recording button. I guess I already had some permissions. I'm going to hit stop now. That adds it up here. Now I'm going to scroll up, and you can see up here, it inserts into active storage blobs the key, file name, content type, metadata, service name, byte size, checksum, created at. And then it gives us a generated URL for the file, and the URL is this string right here. So this then generates a URL for us with the blob stuff. So this is all the active storage stuff that nobody cares about. And right here you can see localhost port 3000, local storage, or Rails active storage disk, and then the entire URL string. So that gives us our entire file name. If I then click send, you can see the attachment must be of type JPEG, PNG, etc., because we did those file validations. So let's go ahead and let's update the file validations real quick. This is done for me inside of my message.rb model. And it's actually not too bad. It's kind of annoying, but it's not too bad. The first thing that I want to do is I want to change which audio files I'm currently permitting, because I'm permitting VND WAV and audio MP3. And I actually need this to be audio/x-wav. And then I need the other one to be audio/OGG. This right here is just going to allow me to upload my other files. This is going to allow me to upload my recorded files that I'm doing right now. And I'm going to add OGG, comma, or WAV file to the attachment type. I'll hit enter, or I'll hit Control S on that to save this. F11 exits out of full screen. Refresh the page, and then I'll come down here and I'll click on the little recording button. I'll say some words. I'll hit stop. I'll hit type test, hit enter, and that will send my audio recording. On the little recording button. Okay, cool. So I'm blabbing away in the background. So at this point, you do have your audio recordings inside of your application. One thing to note is in the message preview, I don't remember if I changed it. But in here, we have the different audio types that we're doing for our little message preview. I would like to add the, case for audio/OGG, and I need a case for the other one. I can never remember what this is, the XWAV. So I'm just going to grab that, come in here, add in the XWAV, and then hit Control S for that. Then once we have that, I can exit out of this. Let me just test everything. I'm going to try to record some more stuff. Test, send it. I'm going to hit play. Okay, that seems fine. I'm now going to hit plus, and I'm going to grab a WAV file, a PNG, a JPEG, a MP4. I'll send all of these. Okay, there we go. And here I can see this is just a test audio recording. Okay, that's working, and the rest of this is working too. So that's good. Now for our little icon, I'd like to make it look not that bad because right now it's really kind of cringy. So let's come over to our assets, our style sheets, and our chatroom.css. I'll hit Control B to hide the side panel, scroll down to the bottom. and then we'll put in some basic CSS. So we named this, or we gave this a class of microphone-icon. I'm going to give it a font size of 1.5 rem and a cursor of pointer. That way, when I hover over it, it gets this little pointy icon just like the other one does. I'll hit Control S, Control R to refresh, and now it's a decent size. But it doesn't have that little fade when I hover over it. So I'm going to just grab this, and I'm going to give this class a hover where I set the opacity to 0.75. I'm now going to refresh, and I can hover over this. If I start recording, it changes to a red icon. That looks pretty cool. I can stop recording. I can cancel. If I hit send, there's no message attached here. So that's all working. And again, all of this code will be in the video description if you want to implement the entire system we have here in this chat room application. But this is just sort of what we have right here. One thing I do want to fix that isn't really being shown right here, but if I change this and I just upload something real fast, let me do like this PNG. I'll hit send on this. If I scroll down, this is kind of breaking because it's falling off the side. So real quick, we'll come into application.css, and I need to remember what I called this. It is the message-image. We're just going to Control F this real quick. This is actually in the chat room. I'm going to Control F this in the chat room. I think for the image container, I want to change this to have a width of auto, I think is what I did. Now, if I refresh this, there we go. Now Percy is in the proper container. The other thing is we have this weird little overflow happening right here. That is from our, wherever it is, our MSG-form, I believe. Let me just check on my other window. It looks like it is. This needs to have a margin-bottom, 0 rem, and important to override all the other nonsense. Now, if we refresh, we should no longer have that bottom bar. Testing, and then we can send that. We have our audio recording. Now, what I want to show you is over here in the Chromium-based browser, if I try to record something, well, I guess I can accidentally click the wrong button. Testing, 1, 2, 3. If I try this, I can hit send. It tells me it has the wrong file format. Now, what happened for me, because it says wrong file format, that I guess is technically true, but what it's doing for me, and maybe you can get this to work. If you can, please leave a comment down below. But what's happening for me is when I try to hit stop, it tells me that it never started recording in the first place, and I just flat out can't get this to work. So that's why I used Firefox here, because it doesn't have that issue. And then if you push this to HTTPS, or if you install a certificate to get HTTPS working on your local host, then it should work. But in this case, I just went with Firefox for right now because it's what worked for me. But that's going to do it for this tutorial. Hopefully this was helpful. I think this is a pretty neat feature because I do like the ability to just record on end and send these messages. And I know that someone was asking about this in a previous video. And hopefully this is usable as a means of moving towards like voice chat for our application if I can ever figure that out. But for now, that's going to do it for me. Hopefully this was helpful, and hopefully I'll see you in the next video.